Good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about why I think video games should be used in schools. With COVID-19 trapping more and more people at home, the rise of video games as a pastime is almost expected. A large portion of Americans play video games recreationally. What isn't as common, however, is the educational utilization of those same video games. Video games offer a unique opportunity for schools as a technological tool that few take advantage of. Too much press attention is focused on the rumored negative effects from video games, which discourages schools from that same opportunity. I'm going to discuss some of the issues that instructors face with kids today that video games can help with, reasons that educators currently don't utilize video games as a teaching method, and the positive effects gained from playing video games. First, let me lay the scene by explaining two major issues faced by educators in schools today: motivation, engagement, and the different types of learners. First up is motivation, also known as engagement. Motivation is defined as the general desire or willingness of someone to do something. Anyone who has been around kids for very long realizes that this is a major hurdle in getting them to do anything, much less something that they may not enjoy, such as schoolwork. According to an article on Forbes.com, upwards of 40% of high school students are chronically disengaged from school. This can lead to lower grades in general and ultimately higher dropout rates. Some people might ask, why aren't students motivated? Obviously, their schooling is something that will possibly affect the rest of their lives. Well, according to PositivePsychology.com, many schools do not offer much in terms of autonomy and do not allow students to learn at their own speed. The regiments often undermine students' inclination to pursue topics that interest them or deeply engage them. This is a unique problem that video games would definitely help with. While students are quick to discount traditional learning, most are even quicker to jump on video games. We've all heard how most parents are complaining that they can't get their kids off of video games. Rather than discouraging this passion, why not use it to our advantage? Instead of saying no to kids, we should be utilizing the same video games they already want to play as a learning opportunity and incorporating it as a way to keep them motivated in learning. On top of that, video games engage players directly by utilizing autonomy and making them feel a part of the action rather than a passive audience the way that reading or watching a video does. It encourages them to interact directly and learn at their own speed. Most video games also allow differing levels of difficulty, which can be great because not every student is at the same ability level, and it can also allow them the opportunity to ramp up the difficulty as needed as they go along. So what's the other issue schools have to deal with? That would be how diverse learners actually are. According to an article from the University of Kansas's School of Education, there are 4 basic learning types. I'm sure we have all heard of them before. There are visual learners, auditory learners, reading and writing learners, and kinesthetic learners. This can complicate teaching a group of students as you have to vary your teaching method to accommodate each type. Making matters more complicated is that some learners can fall into more than one category. I've also encountered the different teaching styles personally, and have noticed their effects on me. I myself am very much a visual and kinesthetic learner. When there are no visual aids for a lecture or speech, I have a hard time keeping track of the plot. Not only that, but specific facts or statements are lost almost immediately as the speaker moves on to the next point. I also have a hard time retaining things without a kinesthetic element. In my professional life, I don't tend to retain training unless I physically role-play the steps myself. As much as I pay attention and take notes, without that interactive element, it goes directly into short-term memory and is impossible to remember down the line later on. So what does this mean for video games? Video games are unique in that they hit 3 out of the 4 types of learners. They have visual elements, audio elements, and even kinesthetic elements to keep the player engaged. Some also have reading and writing elements by incorporating digital books into their gaming environment. This creates an opportunity for schools to cater to the majority of learners in a fun, engaging manner. With these issues ongoing in schools, why wouldn't educators leap at the idea of new opportunities through technology? One major reason is the cost of implementing video games in schools. We all know that budgeting is a common issue in schools. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities in 2017, public investment in K-12 schools had declined dramatically in a large number of states over the last decade. On top of that, because of lack of federal and state funding, many states had to cut various programs to make ends meet. This can make implementing any new programs or tools something hard to justify, and makes adding video games in particular expensive looking. Just how expensive, you ask? According to digitaltrends.com, brand new game consoles can range anywhere from $200 to $500 just for the console alone. I have the majority of the most commonly known major console with their launch prices listed on the screen. Some of these consoles are actually costing more now because they are out of production. That doesn't account for the accessories like controllers, or even the video games themselves. Major video game releases usually retail for around $60, while controllers usually cost $30 to $60 each. Other accessories would add on even more cost, and that's only taking into account an individual setup for 1 to 4 players at a time. How can educators get around these costs? One major element is how prevalent computers in schools are. Many video games are released for computers on top of the console edition. This makes the cost of console setup irrelevant for gaming in a school setting. At most, schools would just need to fund the cost of the games themselves. On top of that, while many major title retail games cost $60, there are also many educational video games that retail for closer to $25 each. On top of that, there are plenty of discount games offered through platforms such as Steam, which offers digital downloads, and often has seasonal deals discounting games to less than $10. There are also plenty of free options online, although these would add in an extra step of educators having to pre-play them to ensure appropriate content. Some companies also offer deals to school districts for access to educational gaming websites for their students, which have countless games available and would be pre-screened. Another issue that educators have with utilizing video games is the parental concerns. We've all seen the headlines. All of America is concerned that video games are too violent or negatively affecting people. One of the big issues with these concerns is that there just isn't enough data. This also doesn't account for the fact, like movies and books, there are many different genres of video games. With games ranging from Minecraft, which is a creative sandbox game rated for everyone, to the Call of Duty franchise, which is a first-person shooter, it can be easy to get lost in it all. There are plenty of video games made for kids and parents approved, however. Games like Freddy Fish or Minecraft or even Scribblenauts are awesome for kids and can have plenty of positive benefits. Another concern that parents have is the amount of screen time their kids are getting. We've all read articles or seen posts about parents being concerned that too much screen time is an issue. Personally, I know that my brother has limited my nieces and nephew to a specific amount of time a day on electronics. I believe that instead of being more strict with screen time on electronics, it's important to cultivate that interest in productive ways. Kind of falls back on the old adage, you get more flies with honey than with vinegar, or even the carrot or the stick analogy. Rather than telling kids no electronics, why not encourage them to spend that screen time on educational purposes? Get away from telling them it's bad for them and instead encourage them to learn from it. So with the plethora of concerns very well known when it comes to video games. What possible positive effects could they have for schooling? Don't the negatives outweigh the positives? There are plenty of specific examples when it comes to how video games can assist in education. One group of video games is obvious: educational video games. These are created with the intention of teaching specific skill sets or even math and science. One such example that I grew up playing was Math Blaster Mystery: The Great Brain Robbery. I was like any other kid and hated doing homework. We had this game on the computer though, and I never thought of it as schoolwork or learning. It was a fun challenge that I wanted to play. It was part of a line of educational video games created by Davidson and Associates. In the game, the player has to travel through a mansion solving math puzzles to progress. Those math puzzles included multiple choice questions, formulas, arithmetics, estimates, ratios, negative numbers, decimals, and algebraic equations. I loved it in a way that doing assignments never really quite matched. Video games encouraging motivation is more common than you think, too. Voice of America News covered one student's experience with video games in his school back in 2009 in the next video clip.
"16-year-old John Diaz is a typical teenager. He says he loves playing video games but doesn't like traditional schoolwork.
I'm not really big into doing homework or something like that.
During his summer vacation, Diaz is continuing his studies at home. That is because his courses are available on his home computer by way of the Florida Virtual School. Florida Virtual's executive director Julie Young says the school teaches students with the technology they most enjoy using in and out of school.
We have so many students that are unengaged in our schools. They power down when they go to school, and we're very hopeful that Conspiracy Code will entice the learner to really get into the detail of the learning.
Conspiracy Code is a video game that teaches U.S. history. Students guide two heroes in a quest to stop a conspiracy to change the past. Along the way, students learn about events such as the American Civil War and report back to their teacher who is posing as a spy. John Diaz says he enjoys American history now.
I like to do the game every day, and I try to keep up with it, and it's a lot of fun. It keeps me interested, and I also get to learn at the same time.
We've got to prove that the conspiracy exists.
The game is jointly developed by the virtual school and these computer programmers from an educational software company. During training sessions, staff at the Florida Virtual School are shown how to integrate video games into lessons. But not every school district and educator endorses the use of video games. The Federation of American Scientists says schools are often reluctant to abandon textbooks for video technology. Educators from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology say the use of video games has also been limited by strict state requirements and the cost of producing the videos. A recent study by scientists from Madrid's Complutense University found that gaming can sometimes lead to high dropout rates and low student motivation. The Madrid study found students need more feedback from teachers during the learning process. But John Diaz says Conspiracy Code has helped him with his history studies, and he says he hopes more video games will be created to cover other difficult academic subjects, such as math and science. Steve Moore for VOA News, Orlando, Florida.
The positive effects of video games isn't just limited to educational video games either. Recreational video games have plenty of instances that encourage not only motivation, but specific learning. Personally, another video game series I grew up playing on the computer is the Freddy Fish series. It's a children's video game series that was a point-and-click adventure game created by Humongous Entertainment beginning in 1994. Freddy Fish is a yellow fish who takes on detective investigations with the assistance of her best friend Luther, a green fish. These games were interesting and taught problem-solving strategies. The games themselves had a randomized ending, so you could play through multiple times, having to determine each run-through who the culprit is, using clues collected throughout. Humongous Entertainment also had similar game series like Pajama Sam for children. Some major title video game designers are also creating special editions or add-ons to their existing games as a way to partner with educators. The Assassin's Creed series takes players through various historical settings in each of their games, and Ubisoft, the developer, has always strived to make them as historically accurate as possible. CBC News covered one instance of Ubisoft developing a new experience on one of their games purely for educational purposes in the next clip.
The world of ancient Egypt is no longer limited to the pages of a textbook. In this virtual world, the city of Alexandria lives and breathes.
You see people working, you see people sleeping, you see people eating, and it really makes your understanding of it way better.
The Assassin's Creed franchise immerses players in a range of historical settings, from Imperial China to the French Revolution to Victorian England, making it a useful platform for history lessons. But the amount of violence created an obstacle for classrooms.
For years now, we kept receiving, testimonies from teachers that were saying, hey, what you're doing here in these reconstitutions of old worlds is fantastic. And I'd like to use it in classroom, but it's not easy.
From the reign of Sneferu.
This special version is teen-friendly and combat-free. It's the product of 3.5 years of careful research development and input from historians and Egyptologists. But is it actually effective for teaching?
Many times we are very amazed by new technologies and we think that it's the solution of everything, but it's not.
He put it all to a test, splitting students into two groups. One sat through a lecture, the other played the game. Then everyone had to answer the same quiz. The verdict: video games can't replace teachers, at least not yet. Students say there's something missing without the human connection of a teacher.
Il peut te donner plus de détails, mais parfois ça aide à juste avoir une idée concrète de à quoi ça avait l'air.
Jean Guédon says the idea isn't to eliminate teachers, it's to give them more tools.
When I was young, I was really enjoying comic books, for example, that were treating about history, etc. And that was the maximum I could get to actually feel a bit more and be immersed more. It really adds to the understanding of the time period.
He says because we don't know everything about the past, there will always be slight inaccuracies despite best efforts. But it's as close to a time machine as we can get for now.
We will see what the future allows us.
Jayla Bernstein, CBC News, Montreal.
Now, Ubisoft isn't the first game maker to venture into the classroom. The developers of Minecraft have built entire lesson plans around the game, custom versions where students can learn about chemistry, geography, computer science. And the makers of SimCity also created a classroom edition of the game, giving students a window into the challenges of city building, democracy, even economics and the environment.
With viewers able to see and experience ancient settings in a way that books don't quite accomplish, how can this not help students appreciate history in a fresh new manner? Video games are an opportunity to enhance regular education in interactive ways that could only help students learn. So in summary, for all the visual and audio learners out there, we have discussed the issues faced in education today and how video games can help. We've discussed why educators don't utilize video games as a tool, and then some specific instances of the positive effects from video games from a learning aspect. While there are concerns ranging around the negative effects of video games, not much attention is paid to the possible benefits. There are many skills taught by video games that could be a valuable tool for educators to utilize as a subtle learning method. As students ourselves, there aren't many direct actions we can take to change current policies related to video games. What we can do is bring attention to the possibilities in the hopes of encouraging more unbiased discussion on the topic. Video games can't replace teachers. We all know that the human element is important in a teaching environment. They could, however, be a valuable tool for teachers to make things easier in the long run.